If your child goes to school in Wilmington, you're going to want to hear about the new redistricting plan and what is happening to DuPont. This is the Delaware Way. I'm Larry Menti. Welcome to the Delaware Way. You have heard on this program several times when we talk about the problems in Wilmington that it all starts with education. We've heard that from business leaders and politicians. And for the time being, at least, the future of education starts with redistricting. To talk more about that is Tony Allen, who is chairman of the Wilmington Education Improvement Commission. And right now, you are tasked with this redistricting job.
I am, Larry. We've been about this business for about 14 months now. We started last September 2014. And the idea was to really think about the broader issues relative to Wilmington education. Specifically, redistricting is a big portion of that, but we see that as the price of admission for really getting to the heart of the matter relative to...
Let's start in the beginning and explain the redistricting. Where were we and where are we going?
Right now, there are 11,500 City of Wilmington children. They are governed by 4 traditional school districts, 1 VOTEC district, and about 13 charters in and around the City of Wilmington, all of whom have no unified plan for educating those kids. We see it as significant fragmentation and inefficiency, and our first step in a very long journey. And so what is the plan? The intention is to reduce the traditional school districts effectively from 4 to 2. So Christina School District, which is one of 4 out of 14,000 school districts in the country that are discontinuous, which is to say they start one place, then there's 16 to 19 miles of interstate highway. It picks up in another place, that they actually leave the city. And in the Colonial School District...
It made the most sense geographically.
Correct. And then the Colonial School District, which literally has about 175 kids, but no schools in the city, we think should also leave the city as well.
And that leaves?
That leaves Red Clay, which would take the lion's share of the children. In fact, we think it's estimated about 50% of the kids would actually be in the Red Clay Consolidated School District, and Brandywine School District, which already serves the City of Wilmington as well.
Now, you've had town hall meetings on this, you have public hearings to come. Is this a done deal? What can be changed at this point?
It is not a done deal. In fact, there was a couple of legislative priorities that were successful under the last legislative session. Most notably was the redistricting bill, which said that the state board had until March 31st of 2016 to actually redraw the lines based on the recommendations outlined in our report. Once that date passes, that authority goes away. So we are up against some tight timelines, but we present our formal plan to the state board on December 17th.
Before we move on to the potential problems and benefits of redistricting and having the 2 districts, let me ask you why we don't just have 1 district? Why don't we have a Wilmington school district?
Yeah, it's a great question, and I don't mean to be long-winded here, but it starts in 1954 with Brown versus Board of Education, where Delaware actually had 2 cases in Brown that were in the Supreme Court decision, and they were the only cases where the lower court ruled in favor of the plaintiff, setting the precedent for Brown, 1954. Delaware didn't implement any part of Brown until 1974. And when they did, they tried a unitary district by federal court order. That was changed 4 years later, and it has the fractured system you see today.
And so there's no way around that at this point?
The court order was lifted several years ago, but de facto, it is the same configuration from 40 years prior.
I can see how 4 districts was unworkable, especially in coming up with a vision, and there'd be management problems in that, not to mention all the charter schools that you mentioned a moment ago. But 2 districts, is that any better, really?
We think it's a start. Again, I talk about this at a lot of town halls, and what I normally say is simply redrawing the lines does not change the educational outcomes for these kids. And we have a full-throated set of recommendations around that. But redistricting, for us, is the price of admission. If we can do that, something we haven't done in 60 years, we can get about the business and the more salient issues of properly educating these children.
So as you go through these town hall meetings, first, how well populated are they? Are people involved in this already?
Yeah, we have literally had tens of town halls, upwards of 80 over the last year. They vary in size. What I would say is we've heard a lot from suburban parents in particular. Their concerns about taxes and the like, or their taxes go up, et cetera. And have had some city voice too, but we can never have enough feedback, to be completely honest.
Let me walk through the taxes for a second, because I would think that the concern of those in the suburbs is that there's a lot of low-income families in Wilmington proper, and their taxes are going to go up to pay for the influx of some of the people that don't have the same tax base. Is that right?
I see that as their chief concern, and what I've said time and time again is, if Red Clay becomes effectively the metropolitan district in the city of Wilmington, the taxpayers in Red Clay, and I'm a Red Clay resident, should not bear an undue responsibility for taking on a larger role.
How does that work, though?
That means the state would need to allocate additional resources for Red Clay to serve those kids.
Which brings, and so I understand the court rulings, I get it, but so many cities have this one district. Mm-hmm. It brings back, if the state's going to end up paying some money for this, why then the two districts? Why is that? Why do you feel like that is the best solution?
I actually don't feel like that's the best solution. I feel like that's the first step in a really long journey. It took us a long time to get to effectively 18 different governing units managing 11,500 children, and I think we'll continue to make these steps. And this is the first in what I expect to be a series of steps along those lines.
Do you see the goal of being one district?
I don't know if I would call it a district as much as a consortium of educational institutions that have one vision for city children. We talked a lot about traditional districts. We still have 13 charters in the city of Wilmington, and our report suggests that in the next 5 years, there could be more children in charter schools and actually in traditional districts. So it's a little bit about a consortium of educational entities that have one commitment around city children that we don't have today.
Why are you convinced, and I'm certainly you're convinced you wouldn't be doing this, why are you convinced that doing this or bringing the districts down or bringing more schools in with the charter schools is going to somehow benefit the children in Wilmington? Are they going to learn more?
No. What I would say is, and I've said this before, redrawing the lines is not our singular focus. Our focus is around educational outcomes, which means more resources to those schools to properly educate these kids. A lot of these kids come from very traumatic situations that, quite frankly, many of their suburban counterparts don't encounter in a regular way. They're going to need some supports to do that. They're going to need high-quality teachers who are experienced and have real knowledge with these kids to really make a difference as well. And they're going to be real leadership needs in those schools as well. Those are the critical elements for properly educating all children, city children in this regard specifically.
There's always concern when you've come up with such a comprehensive plan that's just what's going to happen. So these town halls don't mean a lot, the hearings won't mean a lot, because you already have your plan and you're going to go through with this. Have you made changes yet? And what confidence should people have that their voices will truly be heard and that they could help change this plan? That's
actually a great question, Larry. So I told you I've been at this for about a year and a half now. And we have been fully transparent. We actually released an interim plan last January, and then took 8 weeks of public comment period then. And suffice it to say, 2,000 Facebook members on Solutions for Wilmington Schools, big time town halls and forums, upwards of 5,000, 10,000 people who've all had something to say about this plan. And we've made tweaks. We made tweaks around our parent engagement, which we thought, quite frankly, was lacking. We've thought a lot about the funding part and what exactly would be appropriate for not only low-income students, but English language learners. And we've expanded our focus a little bit. While we're starting with Wilmington, it's an interesting point to note that 50% of all public school children in Delaware are low income. So if you're able to change funding and resources for Wilmington students who happen to be low income, you should be able to do that across the state as well.
Because of the crime rate in Wilmington, are you worried about safety in these schools?
Always,
part of this?
Always worried about safety. It is not part of our educational report here, but I will tell you we're connected to a lot of the folks that work with the school to prison pipeline. Reentry with the Wilmington Hope Commission. Chief Justice Shrine is doing a lot around school to prison pipeline as well. So we're connected with those folks as well.
Wonderful. Good luck. It's so important.
Thank you, Larry.
Best of luck, and please come back, especially when you get close to the end of the process. I'd love to hear more. Tony Allen is chairman of the Wilmington Education Improvement Commission. When we come back, the preeminent name in Delaware is having some problems. We'll talk about the legacy of DuPont when the Delaware Way continues.